Welcome to Spiritual Insights for Challenging Times. I'm Ellen Barron, and I'm so grateful you've chosen to spend your time here with me today. I believe that a spiritual path is the way to navigate life's challenges with greater wisdom, courage, and peace. So, join me today as we start this journey together. Today's topic is embracing change, opening up your heart. The one thing that I think we all have in common is that we experience change, and change is not comfortable. It's not easy, whether it's a change that impacts your health, your finances, your relationships, or just the uncertainty of the world that we live in today. And I'm going to have the opportunity to explore these ideas with a good friend, a Unity minister, Reverend Therese Lee. And I want to share that she's also a grief recovery method specialist. So she's got a really strong background that she's bringing here with us today to talk about how, like I said before, we all are subject to change. And I'm so glad to have you here with us today, Therese. And I wanted to start by maybe asking you a question. How do you feel, or I should say, why do you feel that change is so challenging? That change can really almost, I think, sometimes freeze us, immobilize us. So if you want to help us understand a little bit more about the dynamics, I think that's a great place to start.
Thanks for having me, Ellen. So why the resistance to change? I always like to ask people, who else has a control gift? Right? Because first of all, it kind of loosens up this topic. And what I know from my personal experience of 68 years and 40 years in Unity is I wasn't given any tools as a child to deal with life's changes. By the time I was 13, I had lived in 8 different homes, which at the time for me was just normal. Like, oh, we're moving again. We'll just keep moving. We just keep moving as our family grew. And so I don't know that I'm resistant to change myself. But what I know is I also didn't learn how to deal with it. And so then there's other complications for that, right, that we know about. I think the resistance for most people is the unknown.
Yeah.
We don't know what it means, and it possibly could mean we have to let go of what we do know. And what Unity and New Thought has helped me change my focus of, back in my early 30s, is how about the anticipation of what's coming as newness versus what I'm losing. Change is often associated with loss.
Yes.
And I think we forget then, wait, there's also possibly the accumulation of something new.
And I think a lot of times, even from my own experience, when like you just talked about, it's the unknown that, if I'm losing something, a relationship, and I know that both of us have experienced that in a way that really, for me, it did immobilize me. The whole process of having to change my life, because that's what happened with the loss. If this is a relationship I'm talking about, it required me to change my life. And my first reaction was, I don't want to do that. I liked the way things were. I want to stay with the way it's like, I don't want it. And so I think that there's a fear of the unknown, like you said. It's kind of like, and how's that going to work? And what is it going to require of me to do? But I just remember the resistance. Therese, even the resistance where my husband, who I'm talking about, who passed away 3 years ago, he used to do all the cooking and grocery shopping. This is just a little thing, but he used to do the cooking and grocery shopping for the almost 30 years we were together.
Right.
And I would go into the kitchen and I would say, I hate the kitchen. I don't want to have to do this.
Yeah.
It took a long time to release that. So I know I've been there doing that. Is there anything that you can offer our listeners if they're relating to what we're talking about right now to help start that process, perhaps of,
I was in a similar situation. My husband was also the cook, and I only had him for 10 years. And my life changed, exponentially in 10 years on so many levels, right? Yeah. So I never liked to cook before I had him.
Me too.
And yet I did because you do. But now all of a sudden it's like because you have to. Yeah. And I think it's our 8-year-old that gets engaged. Like, I don't want to. No, you can't make me. And yet, otherwise you're not eating. So life throws you that curveball on top of already the feeling of such great loss of, losing our husbands, which we both, thank God, know what love is about, which is why their death impacted us so much. Yeah. So for me, it was a double, triple, how many ever whammies, because I wasn't in town when my husband passed. So there was that whole shock effect of, wait, what? I can't get hold of him and wait, he died. So there's that. And how do you deal with that loss? And then the disbelief that comes with that, because I really didn't have what I now know is closure, a physical closure until, I got to see the body. But then there's also, he was my co-minister. So now I'm doing church without him, and I don't want to do that. Right. Mm-hmm. So what I know is I was not prepared at all through all the seminary classes I had taken, all of the many different classes I had, took to improve myself. There was never one, and I took some hospice classes and things like that you have to do in school, but nothing for the tremendous loss of my love. And on so many levels. And so then I also had to give my house back to the bank. So 14 years later, I'm still exhaling on that. Wait, what? There's no money. There's no money. So I have no husband. I have no money. Now I'm going to live in my car. Oh, okay. Well, my car isn't really worth living in. So now I have to somehow figure out how to donate that car and get a car that. So I bought an SUV, used, of course. And, so that I could, in fact, if I had to live in it, I could put down the back seat and, and I could sleep there.
Therese, my heart goes out to you because you know what? It's cumulative, is the loss of someone you love. And for all of us, it could be a spouse, it could be a child, it could be a best friend that you've shared a life with, as a parent. All of a loss, and it doesn't even have to come with death, because
correct,
you can lose somebody through divorce, through just something that you don't expect happening, and all of a sudden they're removed from your life. So there's a lot of situations that can take somebody away, and it can be a shocking one. Or my son had cancer for 4 years and then was in hospice, or one that is coming, but it doesn't diminish the pain.
Correct.
So,
and
I think you also said something very important, though, is that most of us are not educated. We're not guided to understand this whole process. So the tools are not there when the situation comes.
Right. And you use the right word. It's called accumulated grief, compounded grief. So, as a kid, so my mother passed when I was 11 years old. Mm-hmm. Well, we never dealt with it. That just wasn't what you did, bless them. And you, in 1970, you just didn't talk about it.
You didn't talk about feelings, did you?
No, at all. So then it was compounded. So I had all the losses each time I moved as a child, and she died. Then you get the stepmother, and then you get the step family, and everything. So then you leave high school, there's a loss and there's a greatness as well, right? And then every time you change a job or every relationship. And then all of a sudden I'm 53 years old and my husband dies. So I have mountains, just in my life, and as does everybody else, of unresolved grief is what it's called, because it's accumulated and it's also compounded. So then something like this happens, and it can, like you said, paralyze you, right? You don't know what to do. You don't know who's on first. And I do not, in all of my, how we have life tool belts, I like to say, I didn't have any tools in my belt to deal with loss. We are taught how to accumulate things and relationships and people. And we're not taught in any way how to deal when life changes, because that's the other part of loss, is that there's change. And that's why I call all of my work embracing change, acknowledging loss, which then allows for the healing of the feelings, which is what the grief recovery method is all about.
And going back to what we were just talking about, growing up, most of us, and I know this because in the classes that we do or I teach, we've been working a lot with becoming awake and aware of what we're feeling, because that's work that's so important for any kind of spiritual growth. So to me, that's a starting place to get used to allowing ourselves to connect to our feelings. And so much of our conversation that comes up is around the fact that, just like we're talking about, growing up. Now, this may be changing for the newer generation, and I certainly hope that it is. But for most of us that are adults now, we didn't grow up in a family environment, because I think it's our Western culture that was really focused on, what are you feeling? What do you need? It was really more, what are you doing? What are you doing? And if something went wrong, it's like, well, what are you going to do to fix this?
Correct.
It's always about get up and get something done so that you aren't sitting in the pain and grief. So maybe you can share a little bit more about how do you let that pain in? I'll put it that way. How do you let the pain in? Because I think that, to me, is part of the resistance.
Correct. Because if I start to cry, I'll never stop.
Yes. It's like,
I remember that.
It's like, I don't want to feel that hurt. I'm already feeling it because it's happened and I don't have a choice. What do I want to sit and feel more?
Exactly. So if we haven't been taught to deal with our feelings as they come up, then we don't know what to do. So it's about moving from the head to the heart space, like we say in New Thought, because it's our thoughts about the situation, the stories we tell ourselves, the things we've read, get through 5 stages and you'll be fine. Well, there are no stages of grief for those of us who are living. Kubler-Ross's work was all about the stages of grief for dying people, which are fabulous. And so there are no tools right now, right? So I just kept thinking, let me get through those 5 steps and I'll be fine. But I wasn't making it from the head to the heart space. Yes. So I think it takes a couple things. First of all, find people that you are able to speak with, who are listening to hear versus listening to respond, who want to fix you because they're uncomfortable with your discomfort. Right. And that's the training that I received. And so the logo for the grief recovery method is a heart with ears. So to find someone who will listen and not say, oh, well, but you're only 53. You still have a whole life ahead of you. You can get married again. That's what someone said to me at my husband's funeral. Yeah. With all the good intentions that they had, but they were uncomfortable with my grief, that they thought, let me just say something that might say something nice, and it's not helpful, as we know, right? And so find those safe places, again, where people will witness, and that's the key word. Will they witness you in your pain without trying to minimalize it, judge it, or fix it?
Therese, that sounds an awful lot like empathy, doesn't it?
It is, yes.
It sounds to me like there's actually...
Which ties into your nonviolent communication work.
Yes. but there's also, we use this, actually a little clip of Brene Brown's in our nonviolent communication class, and it's a wonderful little clip, and we're going to put a link to it at the bottom of this episode so people can see the difference between compassion and empathy, because so many times people want to try to take away your pain.
Correct.
And that's what I heard you talking about, with the listening. They want to get in there and they want to tell you things. That happened to me when my son passed away. People were saying things like, with time you'll feel better, not realizing that in that very moment after he died, time was something I didn't want to experience. My thought was like, oh my God, it's one day that he's gone. It's one day. I didn't want time to move forward because in my heart, it felt like the separation is happening.
Yes.
He's moving,
he's moving
away from me. I don't want the day to stop, to start. I want the day to stay stopped in this moment right here, right now. And so for somebody thinking, like you said, with the best of intentions, to say things like, with time you will feel better, was like the worst thing in that moment.
And it's not about time, it's about action.
Mm-hmm.
And by them saying that to you, what they were telling you basically is stop feeling bad so I can feel more comfortable around you.
Mm-hmm.
And again, they're not allowing you to be in the mourning, which is what happens immediately, right? So I'm not mourning my husband after 14 years anymore. That time has healed. However, it's the actions I've taken that have allowed my heart to heal, because it's our heart and our soul that are saying, please, somebody recognize that I'm hurting. Mm-hmm. Our brains aren't broken. Our hearts are broken when we experience a loss or a death or a change of any kind. And so again, back to how do we do this? We move from the busyness of our mind into our heart to say, what am I feeling about this? What am I afraid of? What is my anxiousness about, or my sleeplessness, or my over-exercising or not exercising? Because we will do something to hide that pain if we don't see it and we don't feel it. Right. And we don't allow it. That's my word, allow.
Right. I like the word allow too. And I think that, again, the interesting thing that I heard in some of our discussions in this nonviolent communication class that we did, because it really focused on learning how to do what I will call active listening. Yes. Learning how to listen. And we did, when we practiced this in the class, just to see, because I'll just share what we were doing, because I think it's a practice that if we all can do this, it starts to break the cycle of listening with our minds, with the idea of, again, I believe like we were raised. What are you going to do? So a lot of us, either want to offer suggestions to thinking in, these are best intentions to help the person move along out of their grief, but they're coming from their head. And the other part of it is, trying to give you these suggestions. And in the nonviolent communication class, when we did the active listening, it was just listening and just saying, I hear your pain.
Correct.
That would be all. You didn't say, oh, have you tried this? Or even this, when I went through something similar, I found this to be very helpful. And there were several people in the class that struggled with that.
Yes.
They were uncomfortable not being able to tell somebody. I don't even think they totally agreed with the idea, to be honest with you.
Correct. I've been through your process. Yeah.
So what I was trying to invite people to do, and I do this in all the classes, is, okay, you don't have to do what I say to do. Obviously, we all get choices.
Right.
But what if you try it? What if you try something? Because it's not just Ellen's idea. We were working from a spiritual concept that has roots not just in nonviolent communication, but in Buddhism, in Christianity, you have the centering practice for meditation, where it invites you to become quiet. We did a whole class, as I know you're familiar with this book, Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach, to really get in touch, radically get in touch with acceptance, which was a wonderful journey all along. So I'm not saying just believe me. I'm simply saying try it.
Right. And this Grief Recovery Method Institute has been around for 44 years and founded by two men. And that's what they realized when they were both in their losses. One had lost a son and one had lost a second family, through divorce. And everybody was trying to fix their head. And what they realized is, no, my head's not broken. My heart is broken. Mm-hmm. And why it's been successful, Ellen, is because of the active listening that I, as a specialist, a person that guides people, through their grief, because I listen. And I witness. I literally turn. If I'm in person, I say nothing. If I'm on a Zoom, then off goes my speaker, because I am here to witness you sharing from your heart space, from your feelings, not from your thinking. And the soul begins to heal. The heart begins to heal. And literally, you can see people's shoulders come out of their ears. And what I hear all the time is, thank you. I did not know that just being truthful with myself and having someone witness without trying to fix me would begin the healing. And that's what you said.
Yes. And I'll share with you the results that came out of this little, it was in one of the classes. We just did it as an exercise. We broke up into, two people together. One spoke for a few minutes about a situation they were struggling with, and the other person was asked to just listen. And then they reversed. And then we came back and we talked about what happened. And there were a couple of people that shared that just as they were talking about it, because we gave a certain amount of time for each person to speak. So they just kept talking about it. And what happened, they said, is that as they discussed it more, they started to feel like they actually even found a resolution. They started to get in touch with something from within that was released. I'll put it that way.
Yes.
Something that was from within that was released. Maybe it was an insight. Maybe it was a little strength. Maybe it was a little bit of a breath. I don't know. But they came out saying they heard themselves.
Yes. Yes. And everything, in New Thought, we talk about this all the time. And I love that your title is Spiritual Insights, because it has to come from within us. So you and I are both widows. And all I would ever say to you is, I'm familiar what it feels like to be a widow,
right?
Because I cannot know what you're feeling, even though America or, the world might look at, oh, there's two widows. They know what each other feels. No, I can't.
Right.
So also no comparison, right? Because everybody heals at 100% when they allow themselves to feel the pain at 100%. Right. And again, no timeline. There's nothing is linear about it. There's going to be those ups and downs moments. And the witnessing that you're talking about, when it's back and forth, is so, it's definitely spiritual, and it allows the person to move within and have the insight or the holy shift, I call it, happen. And right. Then that's where the aha that you're talking about, like, oh, I know now what I can do. And it might be journaling, it might be recording, whatever it is. And it allows them to find their answers within them, because again, you and I have our own way of dealing with you at 3 years, me at 14 years of being a widow.
And there's another component to that too, Therese. We all are different. Aside from the fact that we have different backgrounds, the different life experiences, different cultures or education, we all come from these things. And one of the statements that I love is that we do not see life as it is. We see life as we are. We see it through our lens of our experiences.
Yeah.
But one of the other things is we also have different defense mechanisms. You know,
Yes.
some of us, I did this exercise when I was working with the foster teens because we did a lot of things on conflict resolution.
Yes.
And just to even start to understand how we all respond to anger differently. And so I did this little exercise where we put on different parts of the room. Do you want to punch back? Do you want to run away? Do you just freeze? Do you want to try to fix something and say something peaceful? And the groups went to the different sections because right away, what that allows us at least to see is that how can I tell you a process to help you find the answer that has to come from within you, because I may be fight back and you may be I'm running. So my suggestions are not going to resonate for you.
Right.
So we all have this inner defense mechanism. And to me, that waking up to get to know that as well is helpful. So the more I would like to just put it out like this. To me, challenges, whatever they are, we're talking a lot right now about grief, but it could be anything that we lose. Could be like you experienced losing your financial security. You know, that's another one that can panic you and freeze you and everything else.
Well, and people at our age losing their hearing, having to walk, can't wear high heels anymore because they've got to wear sneakers because they've got to use a walker. They, you know this from your congregation and my own. They're no longer able to drive,
right,
because of eyesight or because of age. And so loss and change happens every day. Yes. And what I like about the nonviolent communication work that you're doing and what I do is we're just getting people to just be present to what is happening in the situation that's causing the emotion, and then look at the emotion. And then where do you go from there? Because I am a fighter and I'm also a runner and I'm also very quiet. But when I get quiet, it's so loud. And then people will be like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, just being quiet. But it's so uncomfortable for them because obviously I like to talk. And for me, it's just become, and in when I was a kid, Ellen, quiet in my house meant someone was in trouble.
Yeah.
So it took me probably the first 10 years of being a New Thought student to understand, oh no, it's a way of being okay. And yet when I go to the gym, I've got headphones on, but I don't want to talk to anybody. Right. So can we accept the many parts of ourselves that are going to deal with all the loss and change differently? But that means awareness, like you said, self-awareness, the wisdom, you said wisdom, courage, and peace. And we can only have those when we know ourselves. And we have the time to have the insights from a human standpoint and a spiritual standpoint.
You know, I think this topic is so important because, like I said, when we were first starting, life, if there's nothing consistent in life, it is that there is change. And yes, we're all going to experience it just growing older, yes, which is inevitable.
We're on this side of the grass though, right?
Offers different challenges. It just does. And so before we leave, is there any helpful spiritual tool? Because we talked a lot about active listening, and not everybody has someone they can turn to in their life right now who's going to be able to understand what we were talking, help them by being there present to listen. So I'm wondering if there's any spiritual technique, if there's any grief recovery technique that they can do, that any of the listeners who are wanting to be heard or who really this idea resonated with them, can you give them some tools? And yes, we'll put your contact information in our link as well. So, because I do know that you are a coach for this recovery program.
Yes. So the part that your heart wants is to be heard. And that's what that's what I am when I'm listening to you. But the part that each of us do as grievers, right? Or so anybody out there listening, is to actually start writing things out, not on your computer, longhand. Because remember when we're kids and we learned how to write, it's about the brain chemistry going through, down your arm and out your hand, right out. So what I miss about Tom, for example, if I'm doing a Tom day, this is what I miss about him. I miss this. I thank you for this. I'm grateful for this. I'm really mad at you about this.
Mm.
So what are you feeling? And then just write the statements out. And it doesn't have to be in a journal. It doesn't have to be anything pretty. It's just about getting those feelings out on paper. And then if you have someone who can witness them with ears, good. But in the meantime, the homework that everybody gets when they work with me is about writing these out, getting out of the head. Here's what I'm thinking, and get it out on paper. So it's always a process of head, heart, hand. And it's longhand in reams of paper. So I forgive you for this, so I've had to do that with Tom. I forgive you for dying. And then I forgive myself for being so attached to you physically that my heart kept me, that I was immobilized for, how many months. I wish it was only months. It was years, Ellen, you know this. So I do it for the other person, and I do it for myself. I would start with yourself first. That's what I would say to anybody. I forgive myself for, I'm grateful, I'm grateful that I had Silent Unity to call to pray, every day, or sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. And my biggest hope, wish, and dreams are this. So what I miss is that Tom, I miss that you did not get to meet 6 of our grandchildren. I miss that I'm sorry that you, although I know he's watching, that we know spiritually, but physically. And so, but take off your spiritual hat when you're writing, Ellen. Yes. Just get it all off of your heart. I miss that you're not going to be, that you haven't met Ellen, because I know he would have loved you, right? So that's just something, an addendum that I add to my Tom list. And then for me to just keep saying that, to know that he didn't get to see my grandsons in snow for the first time this year at 3 and 5, woohoo, they were so excited about being in the snow. And I had tears on my face, Ellen. And my daughter said, oh, are you having a moment? And I said, I am. And so I said, I went in the house, I wrote my little PS notes on my Tom piece of paper that I carry with me, sorry you're not here, honey, and mad that you're not here. Be honest with my feelings. And then later on, she said, what were the tears about, Mom? And I said, he didn't get to see Jameson and Harrison in the snow, and yet did he get to see it? Of course, in the big reality of things, but not experiencing them with me here. Right. And so be honest with it, be honest with what you're feeling. That's all I ever ask for the people I work with in this grief recovery method program, is being honest with yourself, because I'm not going to know if you're honest. I can smell it sometimes, but that's how your heart heals. And that's, now I'm out in my 6th year of doing this work, and it is amazing to realize and sit with someone like yourself who's done, who does this work, and then they realize I'm a superhero. I have made it through this loss and this change. And I just got the tools, I just learned this. And so then they work on all the other relationships, and then they work on the things that are intangible, like the loss of my home, the loss of the credit. And, but first you got to let go all that shame and guilt. I feel guilty for this. I feel shame about this. Name the emotion. Even if it's not logical, just name it, get it off and onto the paper. So it's not about shedding it to the world. It's about releasing it from your heart. And that's the word you used earlier, was release. Yeah.
Yes. I love that you have given a tool, writing, that invites us to just be as honest as we can with what we're feeling. And what I have provided for those in my class of nonviolent communication, because a lot of times they were saying, I don't even know a bigger vocabulary for feelings. We'll put something like that in our link as well, because there are charts.
Yes.
For feelings, and sometimes you could have that feeling chart sitting out and as you're writing, which will help to kind of really understand what is coming up for me. So, Reverend Therese, time is up for today. Thank you so much. This has been a great conversation, so much so that we're going to do a part 2 for this, aren't we?
Okay, I accept the invitation. Yes.
Okay, let's do part 2, and we'll continue talking about this and maybe talking a little bit more about how this work really opening up our heart and shifting from our head to heart. Our hearts change us.
Yes. Thank you so much, Ellen. I appreciate you.
Thank you for coming.
Many blessings.
Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope today's conversation offered you a meaningful insight or a spiritual practice that you can carry with you into your own life. If something sparked a question or touched your heart, or if there's a topic that you'd like to go deeper into, just leave me a message, put it in the chat. I would love to hear from you. It might actually inspire one of our future conversations. I look forward to being with you again soon.